So today I'm going to talk about how to get out of debt and why, and most importantly, why your debt is an emergency. I'll be talking a lot about obesity and how it relates to indebtedness and how they're pretty much the same thing. And so, of course, with every lecture I give, there's a disclaimer, and the disclaimer for this one is that not everyone will be able to get out of debt. The target audience for this lecture is people who are technically earning enough to get by. Everybody's financial situation is different, and if you're not making enough, find a way to earn another one, and we'll talk about that in another talk. So, basic common sense is if you eat more than you burn off, you'll get fat, right? You gain weight. And if you eat less than you burn, you lose. I'm sorry. If you eat less than you burn, you lose weight. The same thing goes for money. You know, if you bring more money in than you spend, your net worth grows, and if you spend more than you bring in, your debt grows. Now, some people say, some people like to give excuses for why they're overweight. You know, it's like, oh, it's I have an endocrine problem, or obesity runs in my family. No, honey, the problem is that nobody runs in your family. Okay. So, with debt, it's not an income problem, it's a spending problem for the most part. The same with obesity. For the most part, it's a discipline problem. You spend too much, you consume too much stuff or food or whatever. Now, if you find yourself unable to survive without taking on debt, there's only two things you can do to save and to get out of debt. One is to spend less, and the other one is to make more. But even when you make more, you tend to spend more. Like, for example, there's a doctor I knew. He was making $16,000 a month, but his debt was growing because he was spending $17,000 a month. Like those athletes. You know, those athletes they make millions, but they're broke after a few years. You know, you have to be very, you have to know where your money goes, and you have to be very cautious about how much you spend. Now, as we talked about last time, money is not about the stuff you can buy. I mean, it is sort of, but that's not the primary goal. The primary goal of money is to be free. So, and the less you spend now, the more you will be able to spend later. So the more you save now, the more you'll be able to spend later. Would you rather have trinkets now or financial freedom? The money that you're spending on random stuff could better be used earning you money. Would you rather be debt-free at 30 and have the ability to buy a house in your 30s, or still be in debt at 40 and renting an apartment? Do you want to be stuck, shackled to having to work at 60 or 70 because you didn't save up enough? So the most important thing is to get out of debt ASAP and start saving. And this is an example of why it's so important to start early. So let's pretend you want to retire at 60 with $1 million. If you start now, your dollar will become equivalent to $2.15 in 10 years. Every dollar you save, sorry. In 20 years, it'll be 4 something. In 30 years, it'll be 10 something. And in 40 years, it'll be 21.72, assuming an average 8% stock market rate. So pretty much, if you save $1 now, you wait 40 years, you'll have to save 20. So it really, compound interest is pretty amazing. And the longer you wait to get out of debt, the more you'll have to invest to get the same results. But before you start investing and making your money work for you, you have to get out of debt, with the only exception of 401k contributions. If your job offers matching contributions on a 401k, you want to do that before you pay off your debt, because it's 100% return. I want to tell you guys that your debt is an emergency. Too many people have a laid-back attitude about their debt. Oh, I'll pay it off down the road. You know, I make enough money. You know, I make $16,000 a month. You know, the 4 cars that I'm leasing, the private school that I'm sending my 2 kids to, I'm a doctor. I can pay for it, no problem. But he's still spending an extra $1,000 a month that he doesn't have. Unnecessary debt, as we probably all know, is killing our financial freedom. Too many people have a laid-back attitude about debt. They go years building up credit card debt. slowly adding to their liabilities until one day they find that their payment is barely covering the interest alone. And the same with weight. People slowly go on putting on weight, a pound at a time, letting their waistline creep up until one day they fall down with a heart attack or get diagnosed with diabetes. And when you have unnecessary debt, you're flushing money down the toilet. All that interest that's getting sucked out of your paycheck is unnecessary. You're just wasting it. You need to fix it now. Here's an example of debt. For example, this is Jim, and he is after the almighty dollar. Unfortunately, he has 5 loans holding him back for a total of $25,700. These are the amounts that he owes, and these are the interest rates. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But how did he get almost $26,000 in debt? It definitely didn't happen overnight. Same like getting fat. It doesn't happen overnight. What happened? He was in college. He was broke. He got his first credit card offer in the mail. Free money, right? Cards tend to lure you into a false sense of security. You're not spending any cash technically, so you don't realize how much you've spent until the bill comes in. In Jim's example, he went out for dinner a few times a week. He bought some shoes. He bought a few tanks of gas. Eventually, the bill came in, and it was $1,125. Unfortunately, he only had $600 in the bank, so he couldn't pay it off. But that was okay, since the minimum payment was only $75. No problem. So he paid the minimum. He kept shopping. He ended up getting a couple more free money plastic pieces, and he was lured into a false sense of security. Now, what would Jim's appropriate response, what should it have been, his appropriate response? After getting that bill in the mail and realizing, wait, I don't have enough money in my bank account to cover it. He's $25,000 in debt, which is, whatever, we're a consumer society, right? No. The appropriate response after his first bill should have been, I totally blew it. I spent more money than I earned. I need to fix this right now. No more lattes, no more dining out, no more clothes, no nothing. PB&Js and ramen 3 times a day. I simply need to do 0 extra spending until my debt is corrected. That should have been his appropriate response. Unfortunately, that wasn't his response. He kept on spending, and now he's $26,000 in debt. Another thing you have to think, a mindset you have to adopt when you're trying to get out of debt, and just in life in general, is it really necessary? Anytime you make a purchase, you go to fast food, you spend money in a vending machine, you buy anything, ask yourself, do you really need it? If you go to McDonald's, do you really need to spend $8 there, or can you just buy $3 worth of stuff off the dollar menu? If you go see a movie, do you really need it? No. I mean, is it good for your quality of life? Sure, but is there a cheaper option? Yeah, there's Netflix. Netflix, is it necessary? No, but it's pretty much the cheapest option out there. You can spend $8 and get unlimited streaming movies, right? So if you're in debt, you really need to stop spending. If you're fat, stop eating, Stop spending, stop consuming. And some people say, oh, but I deserve to treat myself. It's been a hard week. No, you don't. If you were stupid or unlucky enough to get into debt, you don't deserve to spend anything until you're out of debt. And even when you do spend something, it should be in moderation. Now, that was a little extreme. I just wanted to kind of share a little bit how you should feel and how most people feel, and we'll find a happy medium. So debt is serious. I know I could do that. I've been surviving for the past 7 months. I've been making about $800 a month. And I've still managed to, fortunately I don't have any debt. I've still managed to give 10% of my income to charity and church. And I've managed to save like $50 a month, and put it away into investments. And so, because if I don't have any money, I just don't spend it. I eat at home. Food is included in rent. I just don't spend money that I don't have. And but to many people, that's a little austere. It's hard for them to do it, and it just ruins their quality of life. So you can allow yourself stuff, and you have to budget though. which we'll have another talk about that. It has to be reasonable in relationship to your debts and your income. So the simple philosophy here is if you spend less than you make, your wealth will grow. And if you spend more than you make, your debt will grow. Now, too many people have the wrong attitude about this. I learned this the hard way. And this might seem like it's tangential, but I'll explain what this is all about. So a former friend of mine asked to borrow $1,100 so he could go to a funeral. And I was like, yeah, sure. You know, I had a decent amount of savings and I had a good income. So I was like, yeah, no problem. Just, you know, pay me back whenever. And he said, yeah, thanks so much. Can I get it today? And I could have sent him a check, but he needed it today. So I spent $20 to send it via Western Union. So I was out $1,120, right, at $1,120. And I was assuming that since I hate being in debt and I think the proper and honorable thing, and most people do, proper and honorable thing is to pay it back as quickly as possible, right? Before spending on yourself, you want to pay back your debts, even if they're not charging you interest. And I wasn't charging him interest. I was just like, you know, yeah, just whenever. He was on hard times. And so the first payment was fine. He gave me $100, and that was fine. But then after that, getting payments were like pulling teeth. I had to constantly call him up like once a week, asking him, hey, you know, just whatever you can give me, $50, it's fine. Just send it to me or whatever. I don't care as long as you're making regular payments. So how would you feel if you had to pretty much pursue someone to give you money that you lent them in good faith? How would you feel? Pretty bad, right? I personally felt betrayed. I felt like he lied to me and he effectively stole from my future gains. That money could have been invested earning me money and shortening my mandatory working lifespan. So now imagine my surprise. And you know, I thought to myself, okay, he's just broke. You know, like I can understand that. It's okay. I've been there. You know. But imagine my surprise when I saw him on Facebook at restaurants, at bars, at clubs, you know, hanging out with a bunch of people, spending, you know, at least $50 a night on drinks or whatever, gloating about a new watch he'd bought, you know, oh, look, I spent $270 on this watch. And so my reaction was, yeah, really? Yeah, party hard. All right, yeah. Anyway, so as you know, you can already guess how that would make you feel, right? Or how I felt about that. So I felt he was being irresponsible, dishonorable, and of course subtracting from my future returns. And that is, and here's the connection I want you to feel. So now that that guy was a total dirtbag, right? Because he didn't pay me back. Oh, by the way, I managed to get $700 back, and at the total, and at the end of after a year and a half, I managed to get $700 back. And then he called me. He still owed me $400 plus the $20 from the Western Union. And he called me and said, "Hey, Paul, how much do I still owe you? Is it $350?" I'm like, "No, it's $400." He's like, "Really? I thought it was $350." I'm like, "No, it's $400. But you know what? Just if you send me, this was October of 2012. If you send me $200 by next month, November, we'll call it good." So I was willing to write off $220 of my own money, you know, to just get back a little more. Just I'll let it go, you know. And he's like, "Oh, really? That's awesome. Thank you so much." And you can guess he never sent me anything, and we're no longer friends. So this is the way you should feel about your debt. Your debt is stealing money from your future self's financial, from your net worth, from your financial liberty. It's literally stealing money from you. So the way I felt about him, you know, not paying me back, that's how you should feel about your debt if you aren't any. Yeah, that was me. So this is the print is a little small, but basically the right attitude you should have is if you borrow even $1 for anything other than your primary house or a profitable investment, the very next dollar you can get your hands on shouldn't go to, you know, let's go out and eat, let's go spend money at Jack in the Box, you know, get Chinese. It should be to paying that back. regardless of if it's a loan somebody made to you or if it's a loan you essentially took from a credit card. You know, it needs to get paid off. You shouldn't have an entertainment allowance, budget for a pet. Anything extra should not be there until you've paid off your debt. Even if you have a subconscious need for stuff, you need to buy something, keep in mind that if you invest that money, you can buy so much more than you can buy now. Would you rather have a $20,000 Volvo or when in 20 years buy yourself a Lamborghini? You know, delayed gratification helps. So your debt just eats up hundreds or thousands of dollars per year of your after-tax salary because of interest payments. Those lattes you're buying, those dollars could go towards lattes, could go towards shoes, purses, whatever you like. You know, that's what the money could go towards. And plus, once you get out of debt and start investing, those savings could be used to shave decades off of your mandatory working career. You don't have to work till you're 65 or 70 or 72 or whatever. You can retire at 30. There are people that have done it. They made, I mean, granted, they made close to 100,000 right out of school, but they worked for. There's this one guy called Mr. Money Mustache. He goes by that online. He worked for 9 years and retired. He never has to work ever again. He still does, but all right. So how do we pay off debt? The first thing you need to know, and this is quite easy. How much do you make? All sources of income. People giving you money, a quarter you find on the street, your job income, your investment income. How much do you make? How much can you spend? Secondly, you need to know how much you're currently spending. And this is much more difficult because you're like, oh yeah, I have rent, I have utilities, I have this and that. What are you not counting? You're not counting you're not counting what you spend at vending machines. You're not counting at the $2 that you give to your kids. You know, you have to pretty much keep track of everything, down to the penny. And then third one, you have to figure, what do you need to spend? So you need to spend money on housing. You need to spend money on utilities. You need to spend money on food. You don't need to spend money on restaurants. You do need to spend money on groceries. You kind of get where I'm going here? So, and then you have to figure out how much you owe. I know many people, especially if they're deep in debt, don't like to think about this. But it's much easier if you just take all your debt, put it into a single figure, and I know it could be ugly, but bear with me on this, trust me on this. Put it into a single figure and see how much you can pay. So basically you have your needs, the house, the utilities, all that stuff, and give yourself a margin of error so you're not, I'll tell you what I did when I first had debt. And figure out how much you can pay towards your debt to get out of it. Having debt is like rowing upstream. The interest is pretty much pulling you back. And there are mental traps. You know, it seems insurmountable. I was in debt for $4,500 in credit card debt, and it seemed insurmountable. It just was never going away. Most people mismanage their money in little ways that add up. You know, you buy lattes, a few times a week. You go out to eat. You get depressed. People who are trying to lose weight, they get depressed and they binge eat. They stress eat. People who are in debt, they stress spend because it makes them feel good. And then they feel terrible, you know, like we were talking about earlier with eating a lot of cake. It makes you feel good now, but then you feel bad afterwards. So for example, most people, they worry about their student loans and their credit card debt, but they don't worry so much about their mortgage or their car loan. Why is that? It's because they know exactly when the car will be paid off. You know exactly, this is an expense I have. You know, it's my rent. It's my, it's going towards the car. It's going towards the house. I know exactly when it's going to be paid off. So it's kind of a mental, that burden is not on your mind. You know, it'll be paid off at this certain point. So, but your credit cards, no one tends to think of it as a fixed thing. It just keeps growing and growing and growing, because people don't pay it down. So this is what I did wrong when I first was in debt. So I joined the military at 21 and a half with $4,500 in credit card debt. And that doesn't seem like very much, right? This was in 2006. And at 23, I bought a new car for $19,000. And I was still in debt at the time. I had a steady salary. I was making, I don't know, like $20,000 a year or something like that. But I was still in debt after a year and a half. I was still in debt from that credit card. And check this out. 3 months before my 26th birthday, I paid off both the credit cards and the car at the same time. Why? And I never accumulated debt again. I just started saving and investing and working towards my financial freedom. Why did it take so long to pay off that $4,500? What was that? That was 4.5 years. Why did it take 4.5 years to pay off $4,500 in credit card debt, and only just less than 3 years to pay off $19,000 in a car loan? It's because I viewed the debts as different. The car loan, I knew when it was going to be paid off. And granted, I like doubled the payments. Now it was like a 7-year loan, but I paid it off in less than 3. And with the credit card debt, I was anxious to get out. It was insurmountable, so I put my entire paycheck into the debt, and then I had nothing left. So when I needed to buy stuff, I swiped the card, and I didn't budget, and I didn't keep track of what I was spending. So it yo-yoed, and it just kept getting bigger and smaller and bigger and smaller. So I was very impatient. So one thing you can do if you're in debt, just set aside a certain amount. Don't put any more debt on your credit cards. The same with, do you put any more debt on your house or in your car loan? You don't. It's a fixed thing. It'll get paid off eventually, and that's how you should do with your credit cards. And I should have set aside a certain amount like for the car. All right, so let's talk about Jim. Remember, he's almost $26,000 in debt. And these are the minimums. Here are his interest rates and the loan amounts, and here are the minimums. So the $10,000 is at 19%. The minimum is $159 a month. And by minimums, I just basically calculated just the interest that accrues every month. And I added another $1 so it pays down. I'm sure credit card companies are no longer allowed to do that because I think Bush or Obama said, you have to make people pay more than just the minimum so they're not in debt forever. But basically right now, he's paying like $1 extra to each of the loans over interest. So he's paying $342 total towards his minimum payments. So $337 are going toward interest, and only $5 are going towards the premiums. I'm sorry, not the premiums, the principal. And so if paying just this $342 a month, it would take him 24 years to pay it off, and he would have spent almost $10,000 on interest. And that's, when he finds that out, that's what he looks like, right? Now, there are several strategies to get out of debt, and I'll go back to Jim in a little bit. Just keep that in mind. It would take him 24 years to pay off, $26,000 in debt if he just paid the minimums. So there's two things that you can use to get out of debt. One is called a debt snowball, and one is called a debt avalanche. And for both strategies, you make minimum payments on all of your debt except one focused debt. And I'll explain that in a little bit. So the debt snowball is where you pay off the smallest balance first, and then you move your way up to the largest balance. Now this is very helpful if you're not disciplined, if it bothers you. You find all your little debts and pay them off. And so mentally, it's like, wow, I just got rid of a whole debt. I can do this. No more. You can pay off one a month sometimes. So it makes more sense for people who need a boost or feel lost. It empowers you, and you see progress quickly. And a major supporter of this method is Dave Ramsey. And the debt avalanche is where you pay all your debts from the highest interest rate to the lowest interest rate. So basically, no matter the amount of the debt, you take the highest interest rate and pay that off first. You pay all the minimums on all the smaller ones, and focus on the highest interest rate first. And it makes more sense mathematically. You pay less interest and pay off your debt quicker. And a famous supporter is me. Hey, look at that, I'm on a roll. So which one is right for you? No one got that. So often it really doesn't matter. Like in Jim's case, if he has $500 he can spend on debt reduction per month. And keep in mind, his minimums are $342, so he's paying an extra $158, only $158 extra, paying down the principal. If he uses the debt avalanche, he pays it off in 5 years and a month, and it's $30,000. And if he uses the debt snowball, it's It's an extra 2 months, but and he pays an extra like $800, which is not very much. Or that's like $16 a month. The key is to tackle your debt quickly and aggressively, limiting all non-essential spending until you're debt-free. You need to hone in on one debt and send every dollar you can towards that debt until it's gone, and then you hit the next one. So either of these works, for anyone. So yeah, so by adding a mere $150 extra a month to paying down his debt, he shaved off 19 years off his debt, and he saved like $5,000 in interest. So every dollar that's going towards your debt is $1 less that's working against you. So other strategies are refinancing, debt consolidation, and bankruptcy generally as a last resort. If you find you can't make your payments or anything, you can do things like that. And once you're out of debt, do not get back in. Hopefully the habits that you formed, is it necessary? I have a budget, all that stuff. When paying off the debt, stick with you for life. And that extra $500 that he was paying off his debt, now it's just burning a hole in his pocket. What does he do with it? He invests it, and now it's bringing him money. And kind of like being in debt is rowing upstream. Investing your money is rowing downstream. And many people think, okay, I need to get rid of my cards. They're evil. No, they're not. I mean, I have a couple of cash rewards cards, which I buy almost everything with a credit card, and I haven't paid a dime in interest since I got out of debt. I pay it off every month, and I've earned about $1,000 from my cards with the cash rewards. So as always, save as much as possible, invest in index funds, don't buy and sell, start early, don't panic, have an emergency fund, get out of debt, be patient, and have a plan. The end.